Hi, everybody. Welcome to Sunday evening on the Brown Porch. I'm getting ready to discuss the first couple chapters of the Scarlet Letter. As I go through this discussion, remember, I want you to kind of take notes about your own group discussions, whether it be in the Google Doc or in a form on Schoology. I don't care. I prefer the Google Doc just because you can kind of go back and look at it easily then. But just take notes over the discussion. When I tell you to pause, please hit pause and discuss and jot down those notes, what you thought, questions you had as you were discussing, some higher critical thinking questions. I really want to see the development of your thought processes as this novel goes on. This is not an easy novel. It's a novel full of symbolism. It's full of symbolism and as well as some pretty heavy material. And while it was written about Puritanistic society back during this, right after the Salem witch trials, there's a lot of it that we can apply today. And that's what I really want you to get out of it. What lessons do we learn from Nathaniel Hawthorne in 2019? How does that apply to us today as human beings? So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to look at chapter 1. And in chapter 1, we get a vision of the prison. And if you'll notice on the bottom of page 46 or in the middle of page 46 there, it talks a lot about the rose bush. Now in your group, I want you to hit pause and I want you to discuss what a rose bush could possibly symbolize. Think about what a rose is in and of itself. The flower portion and the stem portion. What do you notice on the stems? What could that possibly make a prediction? What could that possibly symbolize as we're going throughout the novel? So hit pause, discuss that for a moment, and then hit start me back up. Okay, I hope you had a great discussion on that. I hope you did hit pause. I will know from your notes. And I want you to take that thought process as you go on throughout the novel and as we look at some of the various characters that we meet. And we start meeting in chapter 2. And in chapter 2, some of the first characters we meet, and I don't think Hawthorne does this just by pure coincidence, some of the very first characters we meet are the women in the town. Now, what did you notice about the women in the town? Forgiving, friendly, understanding. Remember, we're in a highly Puritanistic village. What did you think of them? Discuss that. Talk about how the first woman we meet is a woman in her 50s or around the age of 50. And she says to the other group of women, "I'll tell ye a piece of my mind." And I'm on page 48. "It would be greatly for public behoof if we women, being of mature age and church membership and good repute, should have the handling of such maladies as is Hester Prynne. What think ye, gossips?" Wow. So they want to be in charge of her punishment. "If the hussy stood up for judgment before us five that are not now here and are not together, would she come off with such a sentence as the worshipped magistrates have awarded her?" So this woman is basically telling the other women, we would have actually made her suffer a punishment, whereas the men in the town definitely did not. And they go on to talk about, people say, said another, that Reverend Master Dimsdale, her godly pastor, takes it very grievously to heart that such a scandal should have come upon his congregation. Now pay attention to that line because it is a bit of foreshadowing into the rest of the novel. Arthur Dimsdale is the reverend. He is a beloved reverend in the town. As much as Hester Prynne is despised by the women, Reverend Arthur Dimsdale is loved by them. So pay attention to that. Now, as they go on, they talk about the fact that her punishment is going to be to wear a scarlet A upon the bodice of her gown. So she's going to have a big red A on the front. And they say, what good is that? She could just cover it up. She could hide it. It's not really a punishment. They should brand her on the forehead. If that's all they want her to do, make sure it's something that is definitely noticeable. Well, yet one of the younger women, and notice that it's a younger woman, she says, but interposed more softly a young wife holding a child by the hand. Let her cover the mark as she will, the pang of it will always be in her heart. What does she mean by this? What is this young woman trying to get the older women in her village, in this group, to understand? Now, mind you, this is kind of scary for her because she's standing up to a group of mean girls. Think of it that way. How often is it easy, ladies, for us in a group of other girls, especially if they can be kind of petty and mean, to stand up for somebody who we dub as not as popular as us, not as well off as us? How often do you stand up to your friends for somebody who is outside of your friend group? And that's what this young mother is doing. She is with a group of older women, and she is standing up a little bit for Hester Prynne. What does that tell us about her? What is Hawthorne trying to tell us? Now it goes on to say that the ugliest and most pitiless woman, I love that he puts that in there, the ugliest and most pitiless woman, says, this woman has brought shame upon us all and ought to die. Is there not a law for it? Truly, there is both in the scripture and the statute book. Then let the magistrates who have made it of no effect thank themselves if their own wives and daughters go astray. So this woman, this ugly and pitiless woman, she says she just needs to be killed. Duh. There's a law against it. So now when the magistrates' wives go messing around, when their daughters do things that are not Christian, it's going to be their own fault because they didn't make an example out of Hester Prynne. Wow. Even the men say, mercy on us, good wife. Is there no virtue in a woman save what springs from the wholesome fear of the gallows? So he's saying, do you not believe in yourselves enough to realize that loyalty or just goodness in women exists without being afraid you're going to hang? Is that the only reason women are good, is because they're scared of being hanged? Think about that for a minute. What is she saying? What is this man saying? The only way a woman's going to be good is if she's scared that she's going to die. That's in essence what this woman is saying. How do you, ladies, take that? Hit pause for a second. Discuss that. How would you feel if somebody said, well, the only way they're going to behave is if they're scared they're going to die? Are you back? Did you have a good discussion? I bet so. I'm anxious to see the notes on that. All right. So after that, the prison door opens, and out walks Hester Prynne. Now, she bore in her arms, I'm on the top of page 50, a child, a baby of some 3 months old, who winked and turned its little face from the too vivid light of day. Remember, this child, this baby that Hester Prynne is holding, has been born in the jail. Now, when we studied the Crucible and we looked a little bit at the history of the Salem witch trials, think about what they said those prisons were like. Definitely not a wonderful place to be by any means. And this is where this child was born. And she has been in this dark, dreary dungeon for the past 3 months. Now, Hester, as she comes out, when the young woman, the mother of this child, stood fully revealed before the crowd, it seemed to be her first impulse to clasp the infant closely to her bosom. Not so much by an impulse of motherly affection, as she might thereby conceal a certain token. In a moment, however, wisely judging that one toucan of her shame would but poorly serve to hide another, she took the baby on her arm, and with a burning blush and a haughty smile, a glance would not be abashed to look around the townspeople and neighbors. On her breast of her gown, in fine red cloth, surrounded with an elaborate embroidery and fantastic flourishes of gold thread, appeared the letter A. It was so artistically done, and with so much fertility and gorgeous luxuriance of fancy, that it had all the effect of a lasting and fitting decoration. So she at first clutches Pearl close to her. Then she realizes they're going to make her, it's going to be worse if she does that. So she proudly holds Pearl to the side, just kind of holds her with that one arm there. She shows off the red A, and she does kind of a haughty smile. What does that tell you about Hester Prynne herself? What characteristic would you assign to her? Discuss that in your groups. Discuss that entire paragraph on page 50, please. Are you back? All right, in the next paragraph, we see more of Hester Prynne's strength. But then on the next page, I love that they talk again about her beauty. Now, is it just me, or if Hester had been a homely woman, had been, dare I say, not so pretty, would the women have judged her so harshly? Or is she judged more harshly for being beautiful? What do you think? It goes on to talk about this A, and the women are not happy about it. They are not happy that she has decorated it and embellished it so beautifully. And it says, one of them says, she hath good skill at her needle, that's certain. And I'm on page 51. But did ever a woman before this brazen hussy contrive such a way of showing it? Why, gossips, what is it but to laugh in the face of our godly magistrate? So they're saying she's done this to kind of just poo-poo her entire punishment. Well, again, the younger woman speaks up. Oh, peace, neighbors, peace, whispered their youngest companion. Do not let her hear you. Not a stitch on that embroidered letter, but she has felt it in her heart. What does she mean by that? What is she trying to get through these old ladies' heads about that scarlet letter A and the embroidery that Hester has done on it? Again, hit pause, discuss, take notes, come back. I'll be waiting. You back. All right. Page 53, it said, had there been a papist among the crowd of Puritans, he might have seen in this beautiful woman, so picturesque in her attire and mind, with an infant at her bosom, an object to remind him of the divine maternity, which so many illustrious painters have vied with one another to represent. That scene was not without a mixture of awe, such as must always invest the spectacle of guilt and shame in fellow creature, before society shall have grown corrupt enough. The witnesses of Hester Prynne's disgrace had not yet passed beyond their simplicity. They were stern enough to look upon her death that had been the sentence, without a murmur at severity, but none of the heartlessness of a social state, which would find only a theme for just an exhibition like the present. So she's standing. Remember, Hester Prynne is standing on this scaffold in the middle of town. She is up here with her baby, the scarlet red A on her chest. Everybody knows she has committed the sin of adultery. Everyone is judging her for committing that sin of adultery. And as she stands up there, she looks strong. She looks brave. But when you look at her history on page 55, discuss in your group what that says. It starts in the paragraph that says, be that as it might, the scaffold of the pillory was a point that now revealed to Hester Prynne the entire track along which she had been treading such a happy childhood. Read that paragraph, that page together, and I want you to discuss what Hester Prynne, why she is remembering things. Okay, pause. Then as we end the chapter out, notice the very last paragraph. She notices there is a man in the crowd, and a man that bothers her so much that she clutched the very final paragraph of chapter 2, the child so fiercely to her breast that it sent forth a cry. She turned her eyes downward at the scarlet letter and touched it with her finger to assure herself that the infant and the shame were real. Yes, those were realities. All else had vanished. Now notice she does this as she notices a man in the crowd. We'll talk more about that later. All right, make sure your notes are done. Share your Google Doc with me, and I'll talk to you later. Have a good day, everyone.